Imagine it's the year 1382. A bitter wind cuts across the English countryside. Frost clings to bare branches. The last harvest was poor. Winter came early. In a tiny village, tucked between woodlands and hills, a peasant named Elric braces himself as night falls. His home, no castle, just a single-room cottage wattle landau walls, a low thatched roof. The walls leak cold, the floor packed earth. No chimney, only a small hearth in the center, a hole in the roof to vent smoke. Outside, the night promises to be one of the coldest in years. So, how did Elric and millions like him survive? Tonight, we travel back in time to explore the ingenious, risky, and often communal ways medieval peasants survived winter's harshest nights, not with luxury, but with resilience, routine, and a deep understanding of the natural world. Between the 14th and 19th centuries, Europe endured what we now call the Little Ice Age. Colder than average temperatures, unpredictable weather, brutal winters. For peasants, who made up 90% of the population, this wasn't just inconvenient, it was life-threatening. A sudden frost could destroy an entire crop. Deep snow could isolate a village for days. A failed harvest, starvation by February. Survival wasn't just about staying warm, it was about preparing months in advance. Every task in autumn, every log chopped, every route stored, every stitch sewn was a step toward surviving the deadly nights of winter. Let's start with shelter. Peasant homes, though humble, were designed with cold in mind. Thick walls, woven branches coated in mud and as a rudimentary insulator. In colder regions, peat moss, or even dung, was packed into wall cracks to block out drafts. The roofs, steeply pitched to prevent snow buildup. Windows, tiny, few, sometimes just holes covered with cloth or oiled parchment. Doors heavy, wood, often reinforced with blankets or animal hides. Inside, everything centered around the hearth. The fire was never allowed to die out. Embers were banked with ash overnight, a skill passed from mother to daughter. Starting a fire from scratch, time-consuming, difficult, especially in wet or cold conditions. A well-managed hearth could warm not just the people, but dry herbs, preserve food, heat flat stones, wrapped and used in beds. Sleeping arrangements, communal. Families often shared one large bed or sleeping platforms, draught mattresses on raised planks. They layered blankets, cloaks, even sacks over themselves. On the coldest nights, animals might be brought indoors, especially in smaller homes where warmth was critical. Chickens, goats, or even a pig huddling in the corner, sharing body heat. Every layer counted: linen underclothes, thick wool tunics, outer cloaks made of sheepskin or fur. The poor, they made do with what they had, patching together garments from old sacks or weaving scraps into mittens. Even footwear mattered. Peasants wore leather turnshoes stuffed with wool, some wrapped feet in rags or straw. Nighttime clothing doubled as daytime wear. Nothing was wasted. Food, too, played a key role in warmth. A belly full of hot stew could mean the difference between comfort and frostbite. Winter meals, simple but hearty. Stews of beans, peas, onions, cabbage, porridge oats, or barley, dried or salted meat, if available. Bread was a coarse, made from rye or barley. These carbs, fuel to keep the body warm. Fermented drinks like ale or mead were common, even for children, safer than water, and mildly warming. But food wasn't guaranteed. If stores ran low by February or March, meals were rationed to almost nothing. This period, the hunger gap, was the most dangerous time of year. Community support. Critical peasants rarely lived truly alone. In small hamlets, families supported one another. Villagers gathered around one hearth. If someone's fire went out, they traded food, mended clothing together, rotated watch duties. Older villagers shared cold weather wisdom, stories, songs, prayers. They passed the time, kept spirits up. Many believed in supernatural dangers, night spirits, frost demons, curses that could freeze crops. These beliefs gave rise to winter rituals, burning Yule logs, lighting candles for protection, placing charms near windows. These practices weren't just spiritual, they served a purpose. They gave hope during endless nights. Then came the survival tools, small inventions that made the cold bearable. Foot warmers, filled with coals, clay pots wrapped in cloth, placed in beds, thick curtains hung over walls and doors. Wealthier peasants might own braziers, metal pans used to carry glowing coals from room to room. Even small dogs were seen as bed warmers. And then there was routine, the unsung hero of survival. Medieval peasants had strict winter habits: rise at dawn, tend the fire, work inside, mending tools, spinning wool, weaving, preserve food, prepare for the next freeze. Light faded early. Evenings spent near the fire, repairing clothes, telling stories, or quietly enduring the cold. Night came fast and long, 12 to 16 hours of darkness. Many villagers slept in two segments: first sleep and second sleep, with a quiet waking period in between. During that time, they prayed, tended the fire, or quietly talked in the dark. In this rhythm, survival became a kind of meditation. They didn't expect comfort. They expected hardship. That acceptance made them resilient. They knew the cold wouldn't last forever. Spring would come, the earth would thaw, and the cycle would begin again. By now, you've seen how medieval peasants turned every resource, every habit, and every shared fire into a weapon against the cold. But in the darkest months, January and February even, the most prepared families faced danger. Some years were worse than others. In 1315, relentless rains destroyed harvests across Europe. This triggered the Great Famine, lasting until 1317, when winter struck. Entire communities were caught with low stores, frozen fields, and few options. Many turned to bark bread, animal bones, and boiled leather. In some records, there are whispers but chilling of cannibalism during the worst stretches. In those years, it wasn't just the cold that killed. It was hunger, disease, and despair. But such events also forced innovation. Villages began to adapt more aggressively. In the Alpine regions, peasants carved homes directly into hillsides, using the earth for insulation. In Scandinavia, sod roofs were layered with snow, not removed, because snow acted as a blanket to keep heat in. And in Eastern Europe, stone stoves called pechka or ketchelofen were built, trading heat for hours after the fire died out. These stoves heated the floor and sometimes even sleeping platforms above them. Families clustered around these ovens, cooking, eating, even sleeping on top of them. This shows us that regional survival strategies varied, but all shared one thing: adaptation to nature. Now imagine a typical cold night in 1470. A family in Flanders, mother, father, 2 children, and a grandmother gathers around the hearth. Outside, the snow is falling again. The door has been barricaded with straw-stuffed sacks. A cloth covers the single window, held in place with wooden pegs. Inside, steam rises from a clay pot, turnip and lentil stew, thickened with a crust of stale bread. They eat slowly, preserving the heat in their bellies. Later, the father lays hot stones, wrapped in cloth, at the foot of the shared bed. The children are bundled in wool. The grandmother mumbles a prayer, not just for warmth, but for the rats not to come again tonight. There's no comfort, but there is routine. And in routine, there is survival. Now, let's not forget faith, a powerful anchor in winter hardship. Religion offered hope during the bleakest nights. Churches held feasts for St. Bridget, St. Blaise, and other winter saints believed to protect homes, livestock, and health. Candles were lit in windows to ward off evil spirits and give thanks for the endurance of another day. During Christmas and Yule, entire villages came together for warmth, prayer, and storytelling. These were not commercial holidays, but spiritual defenses against the darkness. Winter was a kind of slow siege, but peasants didn't face it alone. Shared stories of survival and miracles. They passed down methods for storing fat, preserving root vegetables in straw pits, or layering cloaks for warmth. Elders were treated with reverence, not just for wisdom, but for knowing how to survive 60 winters. That made them living legends. And so, survival became cultural knowledge, learned from the land, recorded in tradition, and repeated every season. But sometimes, tragedy still struck. In 1695 and 1696, Northern Europe experienced 2 of the coldest winters on record. In parts of Finland, over a third of the population perished from cold and starvation. These winters were so severe that birds froze mid-flight. Rivers froze so deeply that whole armies crossed them on foot. Even wealthier households were affected. Frost crept down stone manor walls. Wells froze solid. Peasants, already on the edge of survival, had few choices. They left their villages in search of food, warmth, or mercy. But these moments are remembered not just for the losses, but for what people did to survive. Some turned to crafts, carving spoons, weaving baskets to barter in nearby towns. Others trapped wild animals or dug out frozen root cellars to find a few onions still clinging to life. Even in the most brutal conditions, there was effort, a will to keep moving, to see spring again. This brings us to a final point. Spring always came, and when it did, medieval peasants celebrated not with riches, but with renewal. They thanked the saints. They sang in the fields. They buried the last of the old stores and planted new hope. Their resilience echoes into our world. We may no longer live in wattle huts or eat bark bread, but the lessons remain. Prepare before winter comes. Layer your protection clothing, shelter, community, share what you can, and above all, believe that the night will pass. So the next time you turn up your thermostat or pull a blanket close, remember those who came before, the peasants who faced the bitterest winters, not with comfort, but with courage, and whose quiet determination still warms the world they helped build.